Part 2 of Law 2. Learn how to use your enemies. Before I get into the video, I have noticed the number of subscribers not getting the video notifications, so make sure to select all notifications once you hit the bell icon. Moreover, if you want to support the channel, like the video and watch it until the end. Number 1. Turn your enemies into allies. Recruited enemies, unlike friends, expect nothing from you and thus they are more taken by your generosity. They will work twice as hard to get half the recognition you give to your friends. A spared enemy is more grateful than a friend. Whenever you can, bury the hatchet with an enemy and make a point of putting him in your service. Number 2. Sometimes it's better to use enemies as enemies instead of friends. Mao Zedong used his enemies for training in China. In 1937, Japan invaded China while it was in the middle of civil war between Mao's communists and the nationalists. Mao's advisors suggested that it would be better to leave the Japanese to fight the nationalists without interfering, and use that time to recuperate. He disagreed and decided to use the Japanese as worthy opponents to train his army, an army that would have grown lazy and complacent otherwise. Mao used the strategy of constant conflict to gain military experience that was useful to defeat the nationalists later on. Mao's strategy: 1. Pick an enemy you know you can defeat in the long run. 2. If you have no apparent enemy, make one, someone that represents something you go against. 3. Use your enemy to define your cause clearly to the public. Mao would even go to define his conflict as a battle of good versus evil. Remember, enemies and rivals keep you sharp. When you have enemies, you are more alert to every situation, aware of your shortcomings, you work constantly on improving yourself and eliminating your weaknesses. Without enemies or competition, you grow dull, insensitive over time. 3. Use enemies to create a reputation of someone who can be relied upon in times of hardship. Someone who can handle criticism, and who is willing to work with competition to advance a noble cause. The wise man profits more from his enemies than a fool from his friends. Balthazar Gracian. Observance of the law. After the fall of the Han Dynasty, China's history took on a predictable pattern of betrayal and vengeance. Army generals would plot against a weak emperor, start their own dynasty, take the role upon themselves, and finally eliminate their fellow generals to ensure the security of their reign as the head of the Dragon Throne. Few years later, the same pattern would repeat itself. The emperor was constantly isolated, yet surrounded by crafty enemies. This made the position of the emperor the least stable position in the realm. In the year 959, General Zhao Huanye became Emperor Song. He understood that within a year or two, he will be murdered if he doesn't break the pattern. Soon after becoming the emperor, he invited his most powerful generals to a feast to celebrate the new Song dynasty. Once the generals had a great time and drank plenty of wine, the emperor ordered the guards and everyone except the generals to leave the room, which left them terrified of getting killed. Then Zhao said to his generals, "The whole day is spent in fear, and I am unhappy both at the table and in my bed. For which one of you does not dream of ascending the throne? I do not doubt your allegiance, but if you by some chance your subordinates, seeking wealth and position, were to force the emperor's yellow robe upon you in turn, how could you refuse it?" His generals reassured him of their loyalty and innocent intentions, but Zhao continued, "The best way to pass one's days is in peaceful enjoyment of riches and honor. If you are willing to give up your commands, I am ready to provide you with fine estates in beautiful dwellings where you may take your pleasure with singers and girls as your companions." After Zhao's speech, the drunken generals realized that what good is a life full of anxiety in comparison to the emperor's offer of security and riches? After all, most people who crave the power are merely want the trappings of power, like attention, women, and money. In the next morning, the generals resigned and retired as nobles. Zhao was an expert at turning his enemies, hidden and apparent, into loyal allies. In the year 971, King Liu of the Southern Han Dynasty surrendered to Zhao after years of rebellion. Expecting a life of slavery or death, he was astonished when he was offered a position in the imperial court and invited to wine with the emperor. As the emperor offered him wine, Liu hesitated in fear, thinking it contained poison. Liu pled, saying, "Your subjects' crimes certainly merit death, but I beg your majesty to spare your subject's life. Indeed, I dare not drink this wine." Zhao laughed, took the glass from Liu's hand and drank the wine. There was no poison. From the moment on, Liu became his most loyal friend. Another instance has to do with the defeated former enemy and king of one of the smaller kingdoms of China, Xianshu. The emperor's advisors discovered documents that proved the former kings continued to work against the emperor. Zhao invited him to his palace, and instead of killing him or imprisoning him, he honored him in front of others. He gave him a package that he was instructed to open when he was halfway home. Xianshu did what he was told and realized that the package contained the documents that ensured his death. This act of generosity took him by surprise and made him change his loyalties. Interpretation. Zhao Huanyi had a gift for turning friends into enemies through thoughtful acts of generosity, through bribing them with things they truly want, or through displays of mercy in extreme moments of desperation. Understand, not all acts of harm come from maliciousness. Some come from stupidity, others come from pain. Not all your enemies are out there to destroy you. To some, you are merely standing in their way. Don't hit your enemies, and even when attacked, actively think of how you can turn them into allies. After all, don't we destroy our enemies when we make them our friends? Reversal. In some tasks, it's better to work with a friend than an enemy. For example, friends are more likely to do risky work for you out of affection. Some rulers used to employ a trick called the fall of the favorite, in which they would let a close friend take the fall for a mistake. People, after all, find it hard to believe that someone is capable of such a thing. Some rulers would refrain from such an act and would rather pick a friend that isn't too close. Of course, I do not support such antics, but I will let history speak for itself. Never forget that the world is unstable and that the friends of today are the worst enemies of tomorrow. Remember to keep your deepest secrets to yourself. If you like these types of videos, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys in the next video.